Hey gang, I'm just going to give you a quick overview of Aperture like I did in class. I'll try to parallel what we talked about in class, and this is just sort of a refresher for you. I hope it's helpful to you. So let's take a look at the main interface here. Over on this side we have three tabs: Library, Metadata, and Adjustment. Library allows you to control the projects you're working on. You can put photos in different projects and libraries, and we'll go over that in a future lesson. But the metadata shows you information about this particular picture. In this case, the one that's highlighted in white. It shows me that it was set with auto white balance, shot in RAW, ISO 200, which is a relatively low ISO, 45mm focal length, and f5 1/80th of a second. And we have additional information here. We can go into a lot more detail about the information about the photograph here, and this information gets carried along when the picture is stored and moved to other libraries, which is really handy. We're in what's called the browser mode right now, so we're looking at thumbnails of images. This is what you would see once you import the pictures from your SD card or your compact flash card, in the case of the Canon 5D Mark II, which is the big camera. And you can use this slider down here at the bottom of the screen to make these pictures bigger or smaller depending on what you want to see. I tend to like them fairly small in this view. I rate the images first thing when I go through, so I've got my sort of thumbnails, or it used to be sort of like a contact sheet years ago when you were working in film, and I normally sort of double click on an image, take a look at it, see offhand, do I think it's fairly sharp, do I like the image, is the expression nice or not, and then I rate it from 1 to 5, so I could give it a 1-star rating. Notice down here in the lower left, 2-star rating, 3-star rating. I'm just hitting number 1, 2, and 3, 4, or 5. If I want to think I don't like this image at all, I'm not going to use it at all, I can give it a 9, which is delete, just an X, which means I've rejected that image. And then I use the cursor keys to move on one image after the other, and so I'll give that a 3. She's got a sort of a nice expression, and so on. And then I can come back and look at my images and see the ones that I've rated. I can even search on these images, so I'm just going to actually go in here and give this a 5 for a second to show you what I want to do. I can go up here in the upper right and say, show me all of the 5s that I might want to work on. So here they are, and this is the one we're going to work on right now. So this is a nice image, nice expression on her face, but we're going to do some work on it. The first thing I would generally do with an image like this is to straighten it. So I am going to pick the horizontal line to straighten from. In this case, that background is fairly straight on, so that's pretty much straight, both horizontally and vertical, but I'm going to pick the vertical. I could pick, and I might change my mind and pick this wall edge here and straighten to that. So I'm going to straighten to that. Now I want to crop the image, so I'm going next door here to the crop tool, click there. I'm using the master aspect ratio, which matches the ratio of the image that was shot and the image that you're seeing right now. And I'm going to try to come in a little tighter. I'm getting rid of, on the side here on the right hand side, if I cropped here, I'd get this little distracting bit of light area on the other side of the pillar, so I'm getting rid of that there. If I went a little wider, I'd get some distracting pipes and that edge there, so I want to keep that fairly clean, but I want to have some room down here in the hand, some breathing space. So it's a little tricky, but I'm just going to go like that, I think, and I'm going to crop that image. So that's looking better already. I think it's cleaner on the edges. Next thing I want to do is go to the adjustments area over here on the left. Click on adjustments. This is the histogram, and as I mentioned in the tutorial, the histogram really shows you a map of the tonality of the image. So in this case, we're seeing the red, blue, and green, and then this in gray is sort of the aggregate of all of the channels. We're seeing that there isn't a whole bunch of black, although there is some there. It's not a pure black. And a little bit of peaking in the white, which is fine because that's that window there, so we know that that's going to be blown out because it's an outside exposure. But really I want to pay attention to her face, so I'm going to come down here and do a little bit of work on the histogram. So I'm going to click on this mid-tone area, and you'll notice as I slide this, I can adjust from bright to dark here on the mid-tones. I'm just going to give her a little bit of tonality in the face. there, and I'm going to increase the black just a touch. So what I'm doing here is I'm moving this left-hand slider in, and basically giving myself a little bit more dark here. So that's looking better. The other thing I might do with this image in terms of tonality is put a vignette on it. I'll do that at the end. I'll show you how that works. So that's looking better. I think I would want to increase saturation or vibrancy. So let me show you the difference here. Saturation increases the richness of the color all across the spectrum. So as you can see, I've taken that to the real extreme. That's kind of nutty. But generally, when you're dealing with raw images, you want to adjust the saturation a little bit. The problem when you're dealing with especially Caucasian skin is it tends to get over red like that. So you can use the vibrancy slider instead, and that screens out the skin tones, so you can increase, you can see I'm increasing the background without increasing the vibrancy of her face and making her look like she's just run up a flight of stairs or something. So I'm going to go with that. You don't want to make it look too extreme, but you do want to sort of capture the scene as it was. As I said, raw tends to soften or at least flatten images in terms of saturation or desaturate images a bit. So I think that looks pretty good. Now, as I showed you before, I'm going to do some work on the face here. The way I do that is I go down here to the zoom viewer, and I'm just going to click there. Then I have the ability to slide around. I'm just clicking and dragging there. So here I've zoomed in on her face. It's a nice face, nice smile, but a little bit of work could be done in terms of sort of basically kind of applying makeup to her. So I'm going over the skin smoothing here as one of my quick brushes, and I've got the strength set full. Brush size is, I can adjust here. Softness, which is what the perimeter is like. Is it a hard edge or a soft edge? I want it to be a soft edge. I'm just going to, this is basically like putting on a little bit of foundation makeup, if you will. So I'm just going to apply that to the face. It's very subtle, but nice. It just sort of takes out some of the edge without being obvious, and it's just a nice way of softening up particularly female faces, so it's a little bit like adding makeup. Now you notice that there are a couple of blemishes here. What we can do there is use the Retouch tool, and this allows me to adjust the radius of this again, and I'm going to option click to pick a source. So notice that we've got a blemish there, there's some clear skin there. So if I hold down the option key and I get that crosshair, select there, and then put my dot there, then that will, sometimes you have to do it a couple of times. I've decreased the opacity a little bit. I'm going to increase that a bit so that it will have a real more direct impact. That should clear it up completely. It does. So I'm just going to option click here, get rid of that one. Now you want to be careful when you do this that you're not taking away sort of beauty marks or anything like that. Things you want to take away things that are blemishes, but not part of somebody's face, really. That you don't want them to think, well, wait a minute, I had a birthmark there or whatever, and now it's gone. You'll notice here she's looking a little bit tired under the eyes, so I'm just going to decrease the opacity here. I'm going to pick up a little bit of tonality there, and I'm just going to try to soften under her eyes a little bit. Again, not taking away everything, but it just is going to make it look like she's had a good night's sleep. I think she looks a little bit tired there. So I think that's a lot better. And again, it doesn't take away from her looks. It just makes it look like you've put a little bit of makeup. Speaking of makeup, you notice she doesn't have too much lipstick on. She probably had some, but then wore it off a bit. So what we can do there is use another tool, quick brush called Saturation. And you got to be very careful with this, but I'm just going to put a little bit of saturation on her lips there, and that will, I want to make sure I apply it to all, not just the highlights. There we go, that'll be better. And it just subtly gives her a little bit of lipstick there. I can do the same thing in the hair here. She's got nice hair, but it's a little bit, it needs a little bit of highlight, so I'm just going to add a little bit of highlight to the hair just to bring back some of the natural blondness there that I think the raw conversion took out a little bit, and it just makes her look a little more stylish, a little more dressed up. Again, not, you don't want to make it garish, but you do want to make her look her best. And you might want to, I'm just going to make this a little bit wider here, might want to add a little bit of blush to her cheek. Just let me readjust that a bit. There we go. And again, very subtle. Can hardly, you might not even be able to see that, but it just gives her a little bit of, it makes her look a little healthier there. So I think that is almost ready. The final thing I would do is add a little bit of vignette, and a vignette darkens the edges of your pictures and tends to focus attention on, there, I just added it, you can see it went a little bit darker on the edges, it added attention to the center of the image. So I think that's a really good strong image now, and it's ready for use. So that's a quick run through of Aperture, some of the tools in Aperture. I hope that's helpful. Again, it's one of those tools where you really want to get in and dive in and work on it yourself, but hopefully that will give you a quick reminder of what we talked about in class. So hopefully that's helpful. We'll dive in once you get your new machines into a lot deeper aspects of Aperture, but for now that's all we need. That's all we covered in class, and that's all we need to touch on right now. So thanks for watching. See you later. Bye-bye.